Hello, and welcome back to Jedi Marley. Normally on this channel, I talk about my professional experience in the world of consulting and my technical expertise, but this video is going to be on a bit more of a personal subject, which is dog training. So if you're more interested in growing your career or building your technical skills, this might not be the video for you. But if you are interested in peeling back the onion and learning a bit more about my personal interests outside of my professional life, then you certainly will learn something new today. But without further ado, I'll introduce myself. My name is Marley Shees, and I've had the opportunity of training 3 different dogs throughout my life. Each dog has proved to be a different challenge and really required me to go and be adaptable and grow my training style over those 3 experiences. I think dog training is such a deeply personal pursuit and truly helped me to go and grow as an individual and really learn patience and many other different skills that I'd like to share today. But starting with kind of the demographic of people that have dogs, I think it's super interesting that over 65 million households in the US have dogs. So this is by no means a small population and definitely a subject area where I think many people will find the material relevant. Now, for those of you who might not have a dog, or at least be questioning why you should even care about dog training, I think there's a couple key reasons here. At least for me, you truly do gain the most loyal family member as an outcome of the investment that you put into working and training and communicating with your dog. As I mentioned earlier, I also think it's a deeply personal pursuit where you learn just as much about yourself as you do about your animal and how to best collaborate. And you really do learn to appreciate the little things. You're able to spend time in nature. You're able to just go and appreciate the company of having this loyal companion. Now, I also think it's really helpful to cover what the number one mistake is that most new dog trainers make. And this would be trying to communicate with your dog as a human. Now, as social creatures, we certainly are very used to communicating in full sentences and making full use of our vocal ability. But for dogs, this can be very confusing. Trying to speak in full sentences or utilizing big words, dogs aren't going to fully understand that, since they truly only understand the sound that's at the end of the word, such as a word like whoa, no, or go is going to sound very similar to the dog. Also, utilizing different words that mean the same thing. If you tell them stop and no and whoa, which all might mean the same thing, and you're just varying the way that you communicate with them, again, dogs are going to be confused because they're really looking for a single repeatable pattern to go and understand the behavior. Likewise, humans often express emotions that dogs can certainly sense, and they can tell that you're expressing that emotion, but they may not fully understand, or it might confuse the behavior that you're either trying to reinforce or redirect. Things like anger can confuse a dog where maybe they did the right thing, but you're just really upset and heated and you're still trying to praise them, but you have a temper behind you. Again, these sort of emotions can only confuse things sometimes. Now, with dogs and their capacity for communication being so much less than us as the average human, dogs are still able to go and understand up to 165 to 250 words through their lifetime. But it's super important to make effective use of this limited vocabulary that dogs have. Now, throughout this presentation, I want you to meet Josie. She is my second dog and one that I really came into starting to train her with so many different learnings and lessons from my first dog. Josie is a Chesapeake Bay Retriever, which is the state dog of Maryland, a place that I have a lot of family ties. And I got her with really the primary purpose to be my hunting dog. So she continuously goes to water and loves to swim. I do take her on yearly duck and dove hunts, and her personality is that which is very different than your traditional retriever, such as a lab, where she can be very stubborn, protective, but still deeply loyal. The Chesapeake Bay Retriever is a very emotional breed, and many dog trainers avoid working with Chesapeake Bays because of that hard-headedness. But for me, this was a challenge that I was super excited about because I was interested to see what it'd be like to work with an animal that was just as emotionally complex as us as humans. But starting with, I think, pillar with the first pillar here of dog training, I think we need to talk about preparation, since really the way that you prepare is going to completely influence any of the next steps that you take with training your animal. You first need to start with a primary purpose or function here with your dog, because that's going to drastically influence the way that you go about your dog training. I think the first kind of piece here is really having that clear goal of what you want out of your dog. So for Josie, as my example, I wanted her as a hunting dog, and I knew that from day one. But you may just want a family-friendly social animal that you can bring in public and kind of travel with. And if that's what you want, that's perfectly fine. But make sure to have that clear vision of what exactly you want your dog to do, because it's really helpful for your dog to have that direction and know what it is that you expect from them. From there, we can start to collect the right supplies and start doing planning and research to find local training facilities or start to plan what sort of command words you want to use. But all of that, again, is driven off of the goal that you define for your dog. And then the final point I really want to stress on this view here is ensuring that you align your dog with a primary parent. I've seen it happen way too many times and also experienced it growing up with dogs where the family tries to distribute responsibility across multiple people. Now, you can certainly expect your spouse to walk the dog time to time, or your kids to be able to help with cleaning up after the dog, but you cannot expect the primary responsibility to be distributed. It needs to be cut and dry who the owner of that dog is, not only for you as the individual responsible for them, but also for the dog to really understand who is my primary caretaker, since they're going to listen to that person the best and really respond in a completely different way than the family as a whole. So for some examples here with Josie of just preparation that I went through with her as a retriever, one of the first things that I did was locating a body of water nearby that I could use for training. At the time of getting Josie as a puppy, I was living in downtown Dallas, and so there really wasn't as much local just nature for me to utilize for training her in an environment that is similar to where we would ultimately be hunting. So I really had to find somewhere, I think it was a good maybe 30 minutes away, that had clean enough water that I was comfortable to go and use that environment for training itself. Some of the supplies I got for training with Josie was a canvas bumper, which is a type of toy that it's a canvas sack essentially with a rope on the end, and it's meant to kind of mimic the body of a bird for when your retriever is retrieving it. And then likewise, I got wings to try to help mimic the texture and taste of what it's like to retrieve an actual bird. I also got duck scent, and I think duck scent here is really important to highlight because this helped Josie to work on something called a blind retrieve, which is where you throw the bumper into something like tall grass, where the dog can see roughly where it lands, but doesn't have a perfect idea with their vision of where the toy itself is to retrieve. So they have to rely on their other senses, such as smell, to be able to go and find the bumper itself. One common, I think, preparation item for anyone with a dog is going to be getting lots of treats. I don't think I need to explain that at all, but really just utilizing it to help with that reinforcement of the good behaviors. And then this last point here, I think I really missed this with Josie, but will certainly be taking it forward with any dogs that I have moving forward. But this is having a canvas mat or some sort of tent, just some sort of place for your dog to go sit and lay down that is dedicated for them. I miss this with Josie, and so when I would go and work with her, and especially today when I go hunt with her, she has this bad habit of looking to wander and explore, especially after a retrieve. And so if I had a mat or some sort of place for her to consistently come back to after the retrieve, she would be much more consistent in the field and reliable for me to know that she's going to come right back to me. So again, this is something that's tougher for me to kind of train with her as she's gotten older. She has gotten better, but this is something that I wish I had done when she was a pup. So after we've done this preparation and started to just prepare for our animal, The first sort of training activity that we would do here is nonverbal training. This is really the foundation of all training, where you're just focused on reinforcing the good behaviors and redirecting the bad behaviors. You're focused on making training a fun game, that they're engaged, that they're interested in you, and not that you're trying to associate any specific commands at this stage. This is where new dog trainers can sometimes rush the process by thinking they need to start incorporating a phrase or a visual command from day one, and the dog needs to start listening to that. That's actually not the case at all. You just want them to get excited, to have fun, and to know when they're doing something good and when they aren't doing the right thing. And so when they're not doing the right thing, you really want to focus on redirecting that behavior. You're not punishing them, you're not scolding them, but you may just be ignoring them, not giving them a treat, or redirecting them back to the right behavior. So you don't have to go through more of that punishment perspective. You are able to go and do this in a more supportive way. And so for Josie here, a couple of the nonverbal training activities that I went through is first and foremost the name game, or some sort of attention making game where you go and make kissy noises or snap your fingers or even say the dog's name. But you're utilizing these things to just get the dog interested in you and look at you, and then to reward them with praise, attention, or even treats because of them giving you your attention. Sitting or laying down on their own, walking in their own crate, stepping on their spot, all these other behaviors that just by itself is a good thing that you want to reinforce. Likewise here, you just, the bar is very low for repeatability. You're just praising the good behaviors as they happen. And so after we get really good at this nonverbal training and we've gotten to the point of your dog understanding the game that is training, we can then start to make these teachings repeatable with visual and verbal commands. These are really focused again on being able to reproduce the behavior. So for verbal commands, you want to focus on keeping them short, and you want to focus on the end of the word itself. Words like no and go sound way too similar, so you want to make sure that you separate those. Behaviors should already be praised when you get to this step. So this shouldn't be a brand new command that, again, you're immediately starting with visual and verbal cues. You want to first start to introduce that as just part of the game and the play that you're doing with training. So for Josie here, there were a couple of key verbal training examples that I have. So from basic obedience, sit, stay, down, and wait. Those were perfect ones that we had worked on from that nonverbal perspective and incorporated that as part of the play. But then eventually we started to introduce commands for those itself. She also has a release word, which is a great way to teach patience, and hers is free. And then we have a couple of retriever specific commands here, which is fetch, drop, heel, and mark. Mark is where, when they're sitting next to you in a heel, they are watching where the toy or the bird itself will fall and waiting for you to release them to go and do the retrieve. So then finally here, really the end goal and the final mile of dog training is getting to this point of intuition, where your dog is able to communicate with you in a way that seems like they're telepathic. Dogs are incredibly good at picking up on tiny signals and really being able to chain all of these different training activities together. And so this end product isn't something that you specifically train. It's sort of something that comes naturally at the end because your dog has just become so attuned with you and so used to working with you as their owner. A couple key examples of this is returning to a heel directly after a fetch without having to give them any sort of command. Or, and this is something I've really noticed with Josie, but where she's become in tune with the gun that I'm using to hunt with, where she actually looks to where the gun is pointed, and so already getting on top of a mark before I even need to tell her to, or waking up to the sound of a safety being released. So again, just knowing that I only release the safety when I'm about to shoot, and so she's expecting a bird to drop out of the sky a couple seconds after that. And so with all of this, as I mentioned earlier, I think dog training and having a dog is just a deeply personal pursuit. And so it's really no surprise that 86% of pet owners have reported a mostly positive effect on their mental health. And so I think training your dog really helps to integrate them into the family, and it's a crucial step to ensuring that you realize the most value out of having a dog for yourself. Outside of just your own personal benefit, it certainly improves the quality of life for your animal because they better understand you, better understand what you're expecting out of them, and are able to live a more fulfilled life. So with that, I thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you learned something new about dogs or just about dog training in general. So once again, thank you for your time and look forward to the next one. Thanks.